Today we're going to be ranking the relief pitchers and closing pitchers in MLB The Show 23, the best of the best. If you guys are new here, please make sure you guys like and subscribe to the video. Let's go ahead and get started right into this. So Billy Wagner, we're going to go ahead and put him in S tier right off the bat. I think right now he is the best lefty in the game. I have thoroughly enjoyed using this card. He is a collection reward for the AL West, so it is kind of tough to get him. But he is worth it. 110 hits per 9, 125 pitching clutch, has the outlier fastball, slider, curveball, and changeup. I like working off of his changeup and four seam. Solid overall card to hit. So far, so good with him. He's been really good at the pitching side so far. And probably, like I said, the best lefty in the game. There's not very many good lefties right now, but I think he's the best one that we have. Camilo Doval, I'm putting him in S tier as well. I think that he is one of those guys that it has to be in your pen. I don't think there's any doubt about it, especially if you're playing Legend. I don't see any way possible you can't have him in your pen. He, for me, right now is 112 hits per 9, 103 pitching clutch, and on top of that, sinker, cutter, and slider. Good pitch mix, has the outlier on his cutter, so his cutter does hit 100. It's very, very glitchy. I do love this card. He has a decent windup. I think he's definitely worth having a spot in your bullpen. And on top of that, I believe he is free. Yep, I would be correct. He is a free card. So I definitely would be using Camilo Doval if I were you. Camilo Doval, get him in your pen. Daniel Bard, I'm going to put him at B tier. I think he lacks quite a bit of control, but he does have a good pitch mix. And he's one of those guys that you get for free in the NL Team Affinity as well through the NL East. So, or the NL West, my mistake. So 123 hits per 9, 125 pitching clutch, so he does have those going for him. However, his pitch control is only a 74. He does have good pitches with the sinker, being an outlier sinker, slider, four seam, and the circle change. Good luck locating that circle change. I'll be honest with you, good luck locating it. I've tried, it's not very fun. He does have a decent windup. I think he's good enough if you're balling on a budget to use. I definitely think he's worth mentioning in this list. Daniel Bard, if you don't have him and you're on a budget, maybe he's an option for you. Devin Williams, I'm putting him at A tier. I don't think he's on the same tier as Billy and Camilo, but I still use him in my pen. I'm kind of using him off and on. He'll be the first one to go, I think, just because of his pitch mix. Once again, the same kind of concept we talked about last video with Fernando Valenzuela is the same thing with Devin Williams. If somebody can hit a screwball, then they're going to hit Devin Williams. If they can't, well, they can't. So 125 hits per 9, 125 Ks per 9, 125 pitching clutch. Has good enough control to where you can locate your pitches. Has a four seam, cutter, and screwball. The four seam gets up to 97 at points. He doesn't have an outlier four seam, so that kind of hurts him a little bit. I do like his pitching motion. I do like the fact that he can locate, and I do like the fact that he has 31 stamina. So that is a positive with him as well. He goes a little bit longer than the relievers, and with this game being as offensive heavy as it is nice to have somebody who can go a little bit longer. Moving on to Diego Castillo, I'm putting him in S tier. I think right now he's been one of my top 3 go-tos in the pen, and the reason being is not because of how hard he throws, but it's his slider. His slider has really good break, it has decent enough control, and on top of that, he has a good sinker and a good fastball. Obviously, he has outlier on his sinker, so that's really nice. He has 117 hits per 9, 124 pitching clutch, basically 125, let's just call it max. His motion is really good. He's one of those guys that has pitched really well for me. At first, I didn't like him, but now I know how to use him, and with the pars being so low on Legend, or my mistake, the PCIs being so little on Legend on sliders running away from righties, he's just so good righty-righty, and even lefty-righty, he's really solid because you could ramp up the speed going away from them with the sinker and run the slider in on his hand, and the slider is still 90 miles an hour. Guys, we're not talking about a slow slider, we're talking about a fast one, so tempoing is kind of hard to tempo this card as well. So Diego Castillo is one of those guys that I would definitely suggest picking up, and he's super cheap on the market. He's like 20K, give or take. He might be a little less than that now. I would recommend getting Diego Castillo. Eric Gagne, he is probably my second favorite reliever in the game, putting him as S tier right now. I really like Gagne. He does have the outlier fastball, has some decent quirks, 121 hits per 9, 125 pitching clutch, has really good control. He has what we call the big Cooperstown. 70 with a 70-mile-an-hour curveball, nobody can touch and sit back on. He has a good changeup, Good splitter, good slider, a lot of good things to like there. Outlier fastball, like I said, I really like this card. He can dot, he can pitch well. This card is probably my second favorite in the pen right now behind one other guy. And it's really close between these two. It depends on the day you ask me on which one I like better. But right now, it's the other guy. Gagne has pitched solid for me so far on Legend and on Hall of Fame. So he is worth it for that $40K that you do pay, give or take. He's definitely worth it. So get yourselves a Gagne. He's probably the second best arm in the pen. Felix Bautista, we're going to put him at C tier. I put him in this list because he is a decent budget option. He's one of those guys who looks humongous on the mound. He's 6'8", 285 pounds in the game. He looks huge. He's hard to hit. He throws super hard. Outlier, splitter. Outlier fastball. He has a splitter and a slider. He's tough to hit. He's very tough to hit. Even on like BR and stuff when I have faced him, he is relatively tough to hit at first. So if you haven't seen this card yet, you know, he's going to be tougher to hit. I think it's good if you need a very budget option at like 2,000 to 3,000 stubs. This would be a guy that I would go out and get. He's a good righty, good enough righty to get you by. I like Felix Bautista. That's where I'm at with him. Greg Soto, I'm putting him in A tier. I'm not a huge fan of Greg Soto, and as I mentioned in the last video, I like to work off of the off-speed pitches. With Greg Soto, I really can't do that because you can't locate his circle change like at all. Literally like closing your eyes and like throwing the ball with his changeup, with any of his pitches other than his sinker and maybe his slider. It's like that. He has 124 hits per 9 though, and 113 pitching clutch, and he's got outlier on his sinker. So it's one of those things that he's a hard thrower. He's got a good sinker. He's a lefty, which we also desperately need in this game. He just has absolutely no control over anything he's throwing. So he's one of those guys that comes in the 6th inning, the 5th inning, the 7th inning if I'm either winning by a lot or I'm in a very high-scoring game and I just need somebody to give me an inning. That's kind of where Gregory Soto comes into play. I really don't like to use him, but he's good enough to use as a lefty to get me an out or two. So that's kind of where Greg Soto ranks for me. John Axford, we're putting him at D tier. I don't even think this card is worth running in your pen. He does have a decent pitch mix, which is about the only redeeming quality about this card. He has 95 hits per 9, 93 pitching clutch, which for a relief pitcher is not good at all. 66 control, which is very, very bad. Sinker, curveball, four-seam slider. You don't really like the pitch repertoire other than the sinker and the slider, and even the slider, to me, you can't control it whatsoever. It has 45 control. I have tried to use this card. I do not like him at all. His pitching motion's not very good. I would just totally stay away from John Axford if you can. He's probably the only card that's going to go in D tier. Loaisiga, I'm going to put him in A tier. And I'm assuming you have the Trevor Hoffman boost. If you don't, he probably goes in B tier. But I really liked Loaisiga. His hits per 9 is 99, pitching clutch 104. He has the sinker, the slurve, the circle change, and the four-seam. The only reason I have him down to A tier is because I just don't think he's as good as the guys in S. Personally, he's just not. He's got good control on the sinker and the slurve. The circle change is good enough, and the four-seam, you really don't throw it that much. I had good success with this card, like I said, especially with the Trevor Hoffman boost, which we'll talk about in a bit. Actually, we'll go ahead and talk about it now. Trevor Hoffman, I'm going to put him in A tier, and it's just because of his boost. Trevor Hoffman's not that good of a relief pitcher, but he makes the guys like Loaisiga a lot better. He makes guys like Soto a lot better. He makes guys like Diego Castillo that much better. He makes all your relief pitchers better if you can get them all stacked up together with his captain boost. 113 hits per 9, 117 pitching clutch, which obviously will, help himself out if you can get the captain's boost. He has that slow circle change, a fastball that's fast enough, especially with how slow he throws, a cutter that's slow, a slider that's slow, and a curveball that's slow. He just throws slow. That's his problem. He locates good enough. He has good break on everything. I'm just not a huge fan of slow arms, especially in this game where you need the speed. So I don't really like Trevor Hoffman as a closing pitcher, as a relief pitcher, but at the same time, his boost is very, very, very valuable for the rest of your pen. So I think that helps his ranking here. If I were ranking just Trevor Hoffman alone, he'd be in B tier for me. I just don't think he's all that great. Josh Hader, I'm going to put him in A tier above Greg Soto. The only reason I like him more than Greg Soto is because he can locate. His pitch mix isn't as well. But as I said before, my lefties, I really need to locate with them. And my righties, you know, they can get away with it a little bit more. Hader's got 125 Ks per 9, 125 hits per 9, 112 pitch clutch. That's the only part that hurts him. Has really good control. Has an outlier two-seam fastball, slider, and circle change. Has good control over all of his pitches, really, in my opinion. And that's the reason why I like him. It's because I can control him a little bit more. The gold Josh Hader, I would put him there with Felix Bautista if you guys want the gold Josh Hader. They're both solid enough. I think if you need a lefty in your pen, that's a solid one to go get. The only difference between the gold and the diamond one would be their stats, like their hits per 9 and that kind of thing. But if you guys really want the diamond one, I would suggest you guys do that. He is an A tier card. He is an A tier reliever. That's where I'll put him. Lee Smith, I'm putting him in A tier as well. I like his cutter. He's kind of like Felix Bautista in the fact that he's huge, so he's kind of difficult to hit. He does have lower hits per 9 on this list at 96 and 93 pitching clutch, so he's one of those middle inning guys. But he does have 124 walks per 9 and 95 control. So 9 times out of 10, wherever you throw that baseball, it's going to go there. Four-seam, slider, cutter, forkball. I love the pitch repertoire. I wish he had a changeup, but I use the forkball as a changeup, and it's very easy to locate. I still use this card currently. He has good success with me so far, and I'm going to keep using him as long as he does have good success. So he's one of those cards I really like. He's 6'6", 250, so he does look big on the bump. As I said, kind of like Felix Bautista. I like this card a lot. He's a B tier card to me. Mo, I'm putting him in, or A tier. Mo, I'm putting him in B tier. Reason being, he's not nearly as good as he has been in prior years, especially this year. I just think he's got good control, but his pitches just aren't deceiving. He has 98 hits per 9, 100 pitching clutch. He does have a fast cutter. It's nothing like, it's not outlier. It's got 96 cutter, 97 four seam, 94 sinker, and an 87 slider. He doesn't have a changeup, which you guys, as I've said before, I like to work off changeups. So it kind of hurts him in that regards. He doesn't have really anything to get anybody out, in my opinion. I'm not a huge fan of Mo. I hit Mo pretty hard, generally speaking, and my Mo has been hit very hard. So I'm not a huge advocate for Mo, and I think you guys can do a lot better than Mo. So that's why I put him at B tier. Michael King, you're going to notice a common theme here with these guys. I have a lot of people in A tier because I just don't know that pitching's that great right now. There aren't a lot of necessity arms you guys need in your pens. Michael King, I'm putting him actually at the top of A tier. Especially if you have the Trevor Hoffman boost, I'm putting him in S tier. We're just going to assume you have the Trevor Hoffman boost. I'm putting him in S tier. And the reason why I'm putting him in S tier, that one might come as a surprise to some people, but he does have 97 hits per 9 with the Trevor Hoffman boost. Let's just say you get plus 10. He has 107 hits per 9, 106 pitching clutch. He has the sinker, the four seam, the slurve, the circle change, and the slider. He has good control over most of his pitches. You can throw all of them, and he's got 50 stamina. The 50 stamina thing reigns supreme with this card, especially with the way offense is in this game. The 50 stamina helps this card more than any reliever in the game, in my opinion. And I think that's why he's an S tier reliever. That's where I would put him. And, like I said, the Trevor Hoffman boost applies to this card because he is a relief pitcher. I like Michael King. He's got good enough stats. He's got good enough windup to be deceiving. I like Michael King a lot. He belongs in S tier, and he belongs in your bullpen. Rob Nen. This is my favorite reliever in the game right now. Rob Nen is unbelievably good. If you can afford him, go get him. Years past, I've hated this card. I've absolutely despised this card. He does have outlier on his fastball. He has a good slider, good splitter, and a curveball, which the curveball is actually deceiving because it's slow. 50K. He has decent enough quirks. He's probably the guy that comes in the 9th inning for me if it's a close game and I need to stop. It's him or Gagne usually, depending on the opponent. It's one of the two. And I've had great success. I love his windup. You can tunnel the four seam and the splitter. You can do the slider and the curveball decently well. The slider moves pretty hard. It breaks pretty hard as well. And it's also like a 92, 93 mile an hour slider. It's like the DeGrom slider. And in this game, sliders seem to be ruling supreme, especially righty on righty. So I really like the card. He has good control over all of his pitches, so he doesn't really miss his spots much, at least for me. So that's why I really like Rob Nen. He's my favorite card as a reliever in the game. Moving on to Shohei Ohtani, reliever in the game. Putting him at B tier. You guys are asking probably, why did you have Shohei Ohtani's starting card as an S tier card? Well, to put it bluntly, His starting card is much better than his reliever card. I don't think it's even remotely close in that regard of who's better. The reliever card has 116 hits per 9, 120 pitch clutch, which is great. They have the same pitch mix. Obviously, he has outlier on his fastball as well. I don't know what it is about this Ohtani that I didn't like the reliever, but I just wasn't nearly as good with it. I don't think he's better than those cards up top. And plus, I think if you're gonna use Ohtani, you should use the starter. That's just my opinion. That's kind of why I have him here. If you don't have the starter, Shohei is definitely worth having in your pen, so you can use him as a DH as well. I would probably actually move him up to the top of B tier just for that reasoning. I don't think he's on the tier of A's, but I think he's right below them. I think that you can make a case for him being better than Lee Smith. I think you can make a case for him being better than Loizica. I think you can make a case for him being better than Greg Soto if you want the extra righty in your bullpen. But I have those guys up at A tier because of their lefty value right now in the game. I personally think he belongs right there. Taylor Rogers, putting this card in B tier. I think he's the worst lefty on this list. That's the main reason. His 125 hits per 9 is great, but on top of all of that, that's about the only thing that's great about him. I'm not a huge fan of his pitch. I mean, his pitch mix is fine. I don't think his windup's very deceiving. I think he's easy to hit. So that's why Taylor Rogers is there. Some cheap budget options that I could have included in this list. Adam Ottavino, Brooks Raley, they're really good. Especially with the Hoffman boost, I think you could put them C tier along with Felix Bautista. I think those guys are guys that you could definitely make a case for to be on this list. So if you guys enjoyed the video, as I said before, make sure you guys like and subscribe. Until next time, I'm out. Peace.